Test, test, 1, 2. Test, test, 1, 2.
Bring this meeting back to order. Mr. Whittle, go
Okay,
ahead.
so I could agree as well with the bus hazard at the auto zone where the bus is coming out. You have the exit from the Santa Cruz Market right there. Also as well, when we're looking at the in front of the fitness center on Kellogg, just past, you're actually letting it out into traffic right there where you're having that roundabout hazard. It's just really not a bad idea, a good idea, especially for a cyclist. I'm cringing when I'm riding by that. I can agree with wanting to do this construction and looking at the down the road cost, but as well, you know, we have to look at the other ancillary costs and things that happened. And I see that Cathedral Oaks, it's been out. I live right there. I drive by it every day. The shielded lanes just don't get used, you know, and that was something I liked, but they're just kind of wasted space. Other than that, the curbs get swept, which is really bitching. The last thing I want to look at is separate avenues. I understand that we're looking at Hollister Avenue and we want to have everybody have an inclusion in Hollister Avenue. But the safest way for cyclists, especially, and as much for pedestrians, is not having them intermix and giving better avenues for people to go outside of just riding in the road.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
You can't control it.
Our next speaker is Jacqueline Inda.
Mayor, Council, my name is Jacqueline. I am here with two hats. One of the hats is that I'm a co-founder of the Hispanic Chamber, and the other hat that I wear very proudly is the shirt that I wear, which is Casa de la Raza, and representation of our majority minority protected class. And so I come to speak to you about respect and equity. When it comes to the data, I appreciate. But one of the things that's missing in the data is how many businesses are either about to close or are scheduled to close in this next quarter. For Old Town, that means change. And in such a fragile ecosystem where that specific neighborhood is fed by that corridor, you also create gentrification in the only majority minority protected class district that you have. And when you have businesses like Old Town Coffee that we talk about, moving from the area into IV, for example, because of the loss of revenue, that 10% is a huge number. When you have 2,000 people being diverted from a downtown into other corridors, you have losses of income and revenues for business owners, which means you also have less employees that can work full-time. I understand that the data may seem like things are going well, but if it's at risk of losing your majority minority protected class or giving them access to things that the community was built on, which is in the city, our designated downtown, we would hope that you would have dialogue with folks now, because the data doesn't also reflect the 72 surveys that we did that disclosed all of the different concerns that businesses have. And that was in November, right? That wasn't too long ago when we provided that data to you guys. So what I'm asking for is a dialogue in which we can have an open workshop, working with the council, working with your partner organizations to be able to really discuss maybe other ways of working on that street so that creative ideas can flourish, like having the protected bumper for the bicyclists. And I understand that some of those might be a challenge, and a lot of those conversations have already happened. But why not have that dialogue? Why not continue to have that dialogue if we are in an interim phase? It's important for us to work together, and coming to public comment after presentations and data is not working together. It's very short amount of times in which all you're hearing is the negative impacts of a community and brushing them off with data. So I appreciate your time, and I hope that we will actually start to dialogue soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michael Avila.
Madam Mayor, council members, city administrator, staff, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the invitations to come to this meeting, and thank you for the data. And so this restriping has been on a trial basis, and if I give you the opinions that we received from a great number of business owners from Old Town Goleta, the Hispanic Chamber, we conducted number of meetings on Tuesdays at different restaurants and to listen to the opinions of what was happening to their businesses because of the restriping, and it wasn't good. It was not positive, the feedback that we were getting. The fact is that they would like everything to go back the way it was before. So thank you for the data, city staff, but it would be great if you could take some time and go and talk to the business owners face to face. That's the best way to get the best data. They're the ones that live there, they work there, in and out, 10, 12, 14, 15 hours, 16 hours a day. And they're the ones that you should be listening to. Thank you for also for the city considering giving microloans to the small businesses, $120,000. They'll be very welcome. Thank you for that. And do please keep in mind, put it at the top of your list to consider Old Town Goleta to be the downtown of Goleta officially. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Linda Foster.
Hi, Mayor and Council. It's been interesting, long but interesting. I've enjoyed hearing all the data. I've lived here since 1957, up on Upper Fairview in the foothills. And I used to ride my bike down Fairview and look both ways at the highway and run across by the lumberyard. Pepe's was like a little bakery in those days. It had sold tamales in a glass case, and it was wonderful. I agree with this gentleman that we really should go back to the way it was. People drove too fast. I don't know the accident rate. You've talked about the data on the comparisons of now and what it used to be. I get that. We need a lot more streetlights. The Christmas parade and everything is so dark. I'm going off on something else, but the single lanes each ways just aren't working. I'm concerned about, we've had 2 major shutdowns in the years that I've lived here growing up of 101. And we've used Hollister as the corridor, as a temporary avenue to get from north to south of Santa Barbara and whatnot. We need that corridor. What are we going to use now? Where do all of the service trucks park that have to get their inventory out of their trucks to deliver to these small businesses? I'm concerned about the practical side of what Hollister used to be and should be. It's a working town. Put in more streetlights, power wash the sidewalks, put in more trees, speed bumps if you want to slow down those speeders. I'm going to go home and wish I'd said something, I know. Thank you for everything you guys do, but I think you can overstudy things, and you got to get down to the practical, look at what people need. I'm really afraid of what Old Town is going to look like in 2 years. The figure 8 roundabouts, the traffic will flow better once the bridge is done, I get that. But the traffic flow isn't going to work the way it is with the demand of high-density housing that's going in, and nothing is going to be cut back by the solution of the figure 8 roundabout. I bought a new car. I'm worried about driving that figure 8 for the next couple of years. I wish I had an Army tank to drive through there. People don't know how to use them, much less 2 of them in a row. I have to accept that. I live on Ward Drive. I enter Hollister right there at the 217, and my time is done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Robert Bernstein.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've lived in Goleta since 1982, and for that entire time, people have been concerned about the fact that it was a death-defying feat to make it through Old Town Goleta if you weren't in an armored tank. So I'm very grateful for the City Council finally taking action and giving us bike lanes and safer access for pedestrians. It is about equity and access, and the current setup gives that. What we had before, it's not just about whether you literally die or get hit. The way it was before, it felt like a constant assault. You know, under the legal definition, an assault does not mean that the person hit you. It meant that you felt threatened, and that was how it had been. And I really thank Derek Rapp and the rest of staff for collecting this data. It is too soon to know, but the preliminary data looks pretty good, that we are achieving the intended goals. And all of the hoopla that, our traffic would come to a standstill, it doesn't. I go through there all the time. And it's very rare that it comes anything close to coming to a standstill. As the gentleman from MTD reported, they keep on the schedule. I take the bus all the time. The bus is on schedule. It's not some big horrible thing. And oh yeah, sorry. One other thing I wanted to say was that like you, I look at Nextdoor and you see people saying that the world is coming to an end, but it's a few people that just keep posting, and it's kind of died down. And one of the things that these people should realize is that by saying how scary Old Town is now, they are scaring away business. They're contributing to the problems for business people. And I just want to say thank you all. Please stay the course. Thanks.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Barry Remis.
That's going to work. Good afternoon, good evening, actually, Mayor Perotti and council members. My name is Barry Remis with Move Santa Barbara County. And I also wanted to acknowledge that it is quite early, but we really want to appreciate and thank the city and Public Works and council members that requested this update. We are encouraged to see that while back and angle parking, yes, is a challenge. But once you've done it a few times, you can get it. But we also want to acknowledge there has been, and we're encouraged to see, an increase in bicycling, an increase in pedestrian volume. And that's interesting. Think about that. The interim striping project didn't improve sidewalks, but what it did improve, with one caveat, is it is making it safer to cross the street. The quote road diet is meaning less lanes, less traffic lanes of speeding traffic for pedestrians to have to cross. And while we do want to very deeply acknowledge the tragic loss of a pedestrian, as Mr. Widow mentioned, at the Magnolia intersection, where there is no crosswalk, we'll get to that in a moment, we do see, and we are very encouraged to see that pedestrian activity, bicycle activity is up, traffic speeds are down, collisions are down. Again, it's early, and we encourage the city to stay the course because it is a little premature to make long-term judgments at this point. However, with Project Connect still underway, we do encourage to let's wait and see how long, once that's done with the bridge work, et cetera. We are encouraged that more activity will come to Old Town, despite unfortunate business impacts as well. But if there's anything we do want to encourage, and we realize that the investigation is just drawing to a close or just about finished, is that the intersection at Magnolia, we do encourage taking action on installing a crosswalk there, potentially rapid pedestrian rectangular rapid flashing beacons so that we can eliminate the risk for further fatalities. But we are very encouraged at what we've seen so far, and we want to encourage the city to stay the course so that we can continue to see a more thriving Old Town Goleta. Thank you, sorry about that. And also want to acknowledge the recognition of Autumn Glazer and the city for the recognition from the survey, the Public Works. Thank you, have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have one Zoom speaker, Karen Lovelace. If you'll please unmute yourself, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi. Can you
Hello.
hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Hi. I want to thank Blake and Deborah and David for helping me with this. I'm quite the novice when it comes to computers. So yeah, there was a death. That's pretty important, and I hope that certainly factors into any changes that are made in the future. But 1 year ago, the council discussed how 30% of Old Town traffic was through traffic, and some of you said that you wanted to eliminate that. Well, if one accepts the current report, you've successfully driven 10% of the traffic away from Old Town. But Old Town has also suffered an 8.1% drop in sales tax revenue. So I do hope you show that you care about the businesses. It's their livelihood. It's lots of people who depend on that traffic in Old Town. So many of the businesses in that area are service industries which don't pay sales tax. So the data would not be picking up on the negative impact on those Old Town businesses at all. When the impact data for tonight's presentation, when was it collected? During what times of which days? Certainly pedestrians and bikes were not counted over the full 200-day periods where the counts matched for time, day of the week, and weather. Well, since the answer is no, this report is effectively garbage in and garbage out. Why is the bike count at Pine Avenue and its northern extension, Nectarine Avenue, why is it at Pine and Nectarine rather than the bicycle traffic on the bike lanes? Is it a coincidence, or was the Pine Nectarine location chosen in order to buoy the bike count? At least 38 of their 100 green shirted employees of Kitson Landscape Management Company, located at the corner of Pine and Thornwood, bike that route to work. Most of these employees don't travel east and west in Hollister because they live on the north side of Old Town near Nectarine. Few people outside of City Hall and the Bicycle Coalition, Move Santa Barbara, who the city gives grant money to, think that narrowing Hollister Avenue and changing to back-in parking is a success. For an investment of $2.1 million, this would seem like a poor return unless your goal is to drive out Old Town businesses. The city of Lompoc didn't kill its Old Town businesses by narrowing Ocean Avenue to one lane. They maintained 2 auto lanes in each direction with on-street parallel parking. The curbside lane is fully open to bicycles with painted road signs and street pole signage that reads, "Bicycles may use full lane." Cars move into the left lane past cyclists. The street design functions well in Lompoc's Old Town, and there's no reason it couldn't work in our Old Town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next Zoom speaker is Juan Diaz. Please unmute yourself and you will have 3 minutes.
Hola, buenas noches. Nada más un comentario, sugerencia, por favor. Si los letreros que están en la calle pudieran estar en español. Creo que es un poco injusto que los letreros solo estén en inglés y nos perjudican a nosotros que nada más hablamos español. Ayudaría mucho para evitar los boletos y las infracciones. Es todo. Muchas gracias.
Okay. So, Juan Diaz, good evening. I just want to mention that it would be great if all the signs that you have in Old Town Guelita could also be in Spanish, because many times we cannot understand the signs and then we get ticketed and things like that.
Thank you.
I have no further speakers if Mr. Diaz is done. Mr. Diaz, are you done?
Yeah, he said thanks.
Okay.
Oh, señor Díaz, ¿ha terminado su comentario?
Sí, sí, muchas gracias. Nada más eso.
Yes, thank you very much.
That concludes public comment then, Mayor.
Okay. Okay. Back to council. Councilmember Caston, is your name? Okay, all right. Councilmember Carriaco?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's a lot of things I want to say, but there's 5 of us. So I guess where I'll begin is I think what we're seeing tonight is an example of what to do about Old Town safety and the future of Old Town has taken as long as it's taken to get where we are. Because you have so many different folks who can't see, not only do they not agree, they can't see why anyone would think any other way. I guess where I'll start is with vehicle trips. So the vehicle trips went down 10% during the project period. And so we're down, 16,000 something trips from 18,000?
About 16,500, yeah.
But a few years before that, before there was a project, the vehicle trips was around 20,000. And a few years before that, it was 22,000. When we wrote the grant for what became the Tiger grant that became the Complete Streets project, and I went back and looked at Newshawk the other day because they wrote an article about it. The trips through Old Town at that time were 26,000 per day. A public commenter talked about there's going to be a lot of high-density housing in the future, and so that's going to lead to more trips. Well, the city's built a lot of housing in the last decade or so. I think we can all agree Goleta has been building housing. And at the same time, the number of trips going through Old Town have gone down. When I've talked to the businesses and I've talked to people that advocate for the businesses, some of them say that Old Town has been struggling and getting by, and others have said it's been thriving. A public comment that we received in the letter today from one of the business owners made a direct correlation between the percentage of trips that were reduced and the amount that their business had gone down in sales, and basically made it sort of an afterwards, therefore, because of. So what I want to begin with, and this isn't about trying to assault people with data and use data against people, but I do want to say that if that trend continues, what is that going to mean for business? Because that trend started before this project. People weren't avoiding Old Town or starting to reduce their trips through Old Town in 2020 or 2022 because the city was putting in bike lanes. Something else was going on. There's something else going on about the trips in Old Town. And what I want people to think about as we begin to continue entering into dialogue, whether it's with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce or Move Santa Barbara or others, is we need to figure out a way to come together and talk about these issues and not have it be about being right or being wrong. It needs to be about being together and how do we move forward together. Because we could paint it back, it would take a couple of months, but I mean, we could paint it back exactly the way it was. But is that going to mean that the cars are going to come back? Or is the trend going to continue from the last 10 years, the last 15 years? We have 3 corners of Goleta retail that have big parking lots, have a mix of businesses, they have a mix of big box and kind of corporate chain restaurants and chain stores and some local businesses. But Old Town has always been the one part of Goleta that wasn't a lot of chains, unless it's the chain that started in Old Town Goleta, the Habit, the hamburger Habit, which became the Habit. And if Old Town's going to have a future, and if that future is going to be a downtown as opposed to a thoroughfare, we've got to figure out what are the things that matter. And I think dialogue is critically important. And, you know, I think it's important to recognize that this was an interim project that came out of a different process. The Complete Street project process went on for years. There were lots of meetings. They had meetings specifically for business owners at a time of the day when it would be easier for a business owner to step away for a little while and come. A lot of things have been tried, but we still don't feel like we're listening to each other. And what's challenging for me is trying to diagnose whether or not people don't feel like they're being listened to because at the end of the day, the council didn't agree with their point of view, or because they really weren't being heard. And that's really hard to quantify, and I don't think we're going to solve that issue tonight. We do have some information. The information is preliminary, just like this project is interim. The information shows that collisions are down, at least on Hollister, that safety is up on Hollister, that certain parts of Hollister are being heavily parked during business hours. But one thing I am certain of is for the people that live north of Hollister that always had to risk getting a ticket for parking in the red, had to risk a ticket for partially blocking someone's driveway, risked being assaulted or getting into some kind of an altercation because they had to park really far away and they ran into someone that, you know, it was unfortunate they ran into them. Whatever the reason, the quality of life of the nearly 5,000 people that live within a half a mile of this project area, in many ways their quality of life has improved in ways that are measured, in ways that we can look at. The question for me isn't whether or not we should just paint it back. I think the question is, how can we talk to the community? How can we hear from them? What suggestions can we implement right away? What suggestions would take more time? A great suggestion I heard was a crosswalk in Magnolia. That's something I've asked about, other council members have asked about in the past, members of the public have asked about. Crosswalks will not guarantee being safely conveyed across the street no more than a painted bike lane will guarantee someone safely riding their bike down a street, but it helps. And so I think that is something that can help. It's something we've talked about, and I think I'm hoping we can get some council concurrence tonight to agree to that. I think another thing that I've heard, and I heard this from a furniture store near Taco Bell, they see a lot of bicyclists struggling with going westbound towards Fairview, between Orange and Fairview, in terms of what to do. Should I stay in the right-hand turn lane, or should I look for an opportunity to migrate into the first travel lane? That is something that we can address. I don't know if that can be addressed through something like a bike box or some kind of paint, but I think it's something that we do need to address, because the next 6 months might not go as well if we don't address it. So I think that's something that we could do. I'm also very interested in the safety on the side streets. I would also remind people, we had a pedestrian death a couple of years ago on one of the side streets that was not caused by this project, but it was an accident. It was a nearly 2-year-old boy named Munir. These things are going to happen, and it's terrible when we have tragedies. And I think we always need to be looking for opportunities to make things safer all through Old Town Goleta. And we've talked about some things like maybe having some additional crosswalks in some places, maybe having some speed bumps in some places, and we actually have a capital improvement project that's dedicated towards advancing that forward. You know, for the businesses, and I've talked to nearly all of them, most of them several times. I have walked flyers that the city has created in English and Spanish and gone and talked to the businesses. And some of the businesses like it, but they tell me their customers hate it. Some of them like it and tell me their customers have gotten used to it. Some of them just don't like it. Some of them actively make fun of it, go and record videos, and they get a kick out of watching people try to park. Every different type of human behavior imaginable I've seen from the different businesses in Old Town. But at the end of the day, this is not a game. This is people's livelihoods. But in some cases, it's also their lives. It's livelihoods and lives. And I'm interested in partnering with our community to try and have continued dialogue. So this is something I do want to have come back. I'm open to exactly when that should be. I want to give staff enough time to be able to get, not just to get the economic data, but to reasonably have enough time to curate it, enough time to look at more safety data and be able to look at all the ramifications, not just on Hollister, but the side streets. But I also think it's important to recognize that we're also in the process of building new side streets. The whole point of the Eckwell extension is to create an alternative to Hollister for people that don't want to brave Hollister, or that don't want to go along Hollister for whatever reason. It's going to add parking. It's going to add a multi-use path. It's going to add kind of a new green belt. It's going to be really beautiful, and it's going to benefit folks that are looking to get in and out of Old Town or just get back home. The last thing I'll say is I don't want to look at Project Connect in a vacuum. The temporary roundabouts should, and I'm going to use air quotes, should help circulation. But I think it's incredibly important that we're thinking ahead to when the temporary roundabouts are implemented for pedestrian and bicycle safety. Right now, the area around Dearborn and Kellogg, there is one part that is protected by a railing, but I see bikes confused about whether or not they should just continue down into Old Town going west, or if they should kind of go around and get behind that little barrier. And if they're going fast enough, they're not going to see the sign that basically says walk your bike. And so I know that the bridge work is happening. I know that the roundabout work is happening, and some of the benefits of that, like the multi-use path on one side of the bridge, are making good progress. So my question is, going forward, how do we make sure we utilize that multi-use path and make sure people understand that it's there for them to get through that more challenging section of Old Town if you're a bicyclist or pedestrian, to know that, get them to know that that's there and that's for them. But then also, when we switch sides with the bridge work, what is that going to mean for the businesses in Kellogg Square? What is that going to mean for Goleta Floral? What is that going to mean for the gym? What is that going to mean for the Trek store? There's a lot, what is that going to mean for the Imperial? There's a lot of businesses right there. How is that switch going to be handled from a bike and pedestrian standpoint? How, I've heard roundabouts described by some bike riders as meat grinders. So it's important that as we move into a temporary roundabout situation, that we're taking every step possible to make sure that bicyclists and pedestrians can safely navigate that. Because there's kids that live in Old Town and there's only one school for them. It's a private school, but some of them go. And we want to make sure that the kids that are walking to St. Raphael's can get there safe. I want to make sure that the people who are trying to get to Kellogg Square can get there safe. The people that are trying to get to La Chapala Market can get there safe, or El Sitio, or La Tapatia. I can go on. So many businesses right now are kind of on the edge. I don't have some of the same data that was kind of shared about what they think is going to happen or what they know is going to happen in the next few months. All the more reason for some dialogue. But I just think it's so important that we shouldn't surrender all rational thought to the data, but I do think we need to pay attention to it. And I think some people have trouble accepting that data. They have trouble accepting that it's actually been safer, even if it's a short period of time. And I think there's other people that are maybe wanting to just, oh, well, that proves it. And let's just stop talking about this, right? And we have to keep the dialogue going. And I'm committed to that. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Councilmember Reyes-Martin.
Thank you. I just have some brief comments. I really want to appreciate all of the public comment, not just tonight, but in the last several months, and also really appreciate staff for being very patient with council in particular. I know that anytime we get a question or a complaint, we take it to staff, and you all have been very patient and responsive in getting us the information, getting the public information, having multiple ways for the public to share concerns or questions and have that addressed in English and in Spanish. So I really want to appreciate you all for that. I do think that we should continue to look at this. I know the staff report suggested annually. I'm open to council, but that does seem like a reasonable amount of time to gather the data and then be able to share meaningful information from that. And like I said earlier, I remain open to making adjustments and making questions even in between that kind of year or annual update. I think we had a lot of really good suggestions from public comment for things to either look at or consider, and I know that has been an iterative process throughout all this, and I remain open to continuing to look at that. I do think that some of the we need more time with the data and more of it over time, but I do think some of this initial data is I think encouraging was a word that I heard from the audience. I would say cautiously optimistic on especially some of the safety issues, which, as I've mentioned, continues to be one of my top concerns. And we just need to keep and have more data to see how that's working and balance that with some of the practical everyday pain points that we do hear from the public. So I think that's really important. I think there's a lot of continued opportunity to support our local businesses. We heard some suggestions today. I'm really open to that and want to encourage that to the extent possible. And I also want to caution us that there are and will continue to be some really serious economic factors that have nothing to do with Goleta and are very much outside of our control. I've talked to lots of business owners in Goleta and residents who are having a very high level of economic anxiety right now related to increased, costs of things, a lot of uncertainty about if, consumer good prices are going to fluctuate. I think we see that with the cars, and the impact there, because those are really high ticket items that maybe families are choosing, to hold off on for now. And there just continues to be a lot of anxiety on that. I think that for the foreseeable future is going to fluctuate. And that is going to have an impact on our local businesses, on families. I know a lot of folks who are worried about the stability of their job in all this. They may work for the federal government or work for ancillary organizations that rely on the federal government. So there's a lot of impacts to that I think we're also going to see. And it's not going to have anything to do with this project or what we're doing in Goleta. So I do want to caution that too when we look at the economic data. And we should still continue to do anything and everything we can to support our local businesses. So thank you to staff for the presentation tonight. And we should continue this dialogue and get an update in the future. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you. Old Town Goleta is such a special place, and its residents deserve to feel safe when they're driving, walking, or cycling through the area. The businesses deserve to thrive, and visitors who go to Old Town, should really, enjoy the experience. And I think we're united by feeling that way about Old Town Goleta. And, my perception as somebody who participated in some of this process as a resident in some of the, early meetings was the goal, some of the ideas were about, can we have a win-win-win? Can it be a win for businesses? Can it be a win for drivers? Can it be a win for cyclists? Can it be a win for pedestrians? To try to have a balanced approach. And I think there, in a lot of ways, again, so far it looks like there are a lot of really good things that have come out of this. I will say that I do think the peak hours, I think that the number one consistent feedback that I have heard is during the peak hours of commute traffic, particularly eastbound, sort of remains a choke point. And it's challenging because we still have the ongoing construction with the bridge and the roundabouts at the east end. But I do think we need to continue to look at that in terms of what we have control over. Some of the ideas that were raised in the comments, I would support staff evaluating some of the items that were raised. And I get that there's different trade-offs with some of this. But looking at the right turn on Kidman westbound and potential for right turn on Kellogg eastbound. The other comment that came in was about, and just walking the area myself, is the stretch between Rutherford East. There's a lot of businesses on the north side that have the driveways. And I recognize that there's some inherent risks that come with navigating in and out of those driveways. But just for that short section, whether it's, Rutherford to the community center or Rutherford down to Kinman, I don't know if we could evaluate whether or not that center, the center lane could go back to consider allowing the turns just through that stretch, because effectively for some of those businesses, sort of unless you go down and make a U-turn, you can only access by sort of a right-hand turn from the westbound side. So if that could be looked at, because we would still have the advantage of the, hopefully having the single lanes helps reduce the speed and reduce the risks associated with any left turns that are happening across that traffic. I don't know if there's any other light signal tweaks that could be done at the peak hours. If there is, I think it's worth exploring, as well as any of the data about neighborhood collisions. I think that would be helpful to have. And then the other issue that's sort of come up, I would say, is sort of an indirect result of this conversation is, I know this has percolated in a couple different conversations we've had about Old Town, but this question about employee parking sort of keeps coming up. So I hope we might be able to bring that back, maybe as a separate item, but that there might be, and not only for the city to have a role in that, but even for businesses with each other, agreements among businesses about how employee parking is used and things like that. I'm fully in support of all things we can do, both to support Old Town businesses as vendors and Goleta businesses, and also the use. I do think it sounds like we may still have some capacity. I know there's times where the city lots can fill up, but it sounds like at other times we have capacity. So I would certainly urge members of the public who are not comfortable with the back and angled parking. Old Town is a really special place and we need to support those businesses. And to the extent that if you're not comfortable with the back end parking, I would urge residents to use the city lots as available because they're really helpful. And yeah, and I'll just say, and anecdotally, I go as a visitor to Old Town, and when I'm there, going to the restaurants, if I'm going, usually I'm going, it's evenings or weekends for me, and I have found it easier to park. I have found it quieter in the streets, and so I've really enjoyed that experience. But that said, the peak, the commute times does remain a challenge, and so I think I would favor bringing this back. I am curious to sort of know how things will change, even with sort of the temporary iteration of the roundabouts. And so I don't know if sort of as an interim revisit, if we could bring it back sooner. I'm thinking something more like October, November, just to see if that is helping or not. But those are some of my preliminary thoughts.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I guess a couple of things, and a lot of the stuff. No, it's not. So a lot of what I was going to say, my colleagues have said, so I'll just reiterate a couple of things. That is, first, to just point out this is a work in progress and that we are collecting. I mean, part of this is to hear the comments that people have, whether it was written or whether in person, and to incorporate those things to try and, as staff, I'm hopeful, I assume, will analyze those things and look for opportunities where possible to improve the project. And that's part of what this is about. We'll continue learning, using the information we gather, and making improvements. This is also a follow-up on comments that people have made as far as the businesses. And one of the things, just as a reminder, one of the things that prompted this project, in addition to safety, was that sense that in the Economic Development Strategic Plan and others, over multiple generations, there was
a goal to enhance Old Town's sense of place, to build on its walkability, to take advantage of what it has and enable it to compete better in these times where businesses can be really stressed by the Amazons and all the remote sales. That if people go to Old Town and take advantage, they can park, they can walk around, go to a restaurant. While you're at a restaurant, you pick up some flowers or make some copies or whatever it might be, that we can enhance it. And so that was part of the genesis, and we'll see that flower, I'm hopeful, as this project goes forward. But I would add, just like we said with regards to the circulation questions, if there are ideas that people have as far as what would enhance that that sense of place, the walkability, what would it make the area more attractive, give us those ideas too. And but otherwise, a great report, and if it makes sense to go to Councilmember Smith's suggestion as far as once the roundabouts are there, if there's a certain amount of time after that, if that makes sense, if you think that would be a good point to give us new information, that's fine. I'm flexible. When you think we're going to have I guess you also want to time it with regards to sales tax data and things like that. So, but you get the idea.
Well, I'm going to be brief. I'll jump in here. I think what you're hearing from all of us is the fact that we're pretty much all on the same page. We want pretty much the same things. And what is that? We want the public to be safe. We want pedestrians to be safe. We want bicyclists to be safe. We want cars to know where they're supposed to be. When it's chaos on a road, they're not feeling safe because now they know where the bikes are, where the pedestrians are, where the cars need to be, and stay in their lane. So that's my takeaway, and what's always been important to me is public safety. And I'm hearing that as well from my colleagues. For the businesses, we started out with this project thinking that it would help the businesses, because what was happening they weren't able to enforce the timed parking. You needed more parking, so we worked on that. And cars, I worked in Old Town 2010, I guess, right before I started here. And I know how hard it was to ever find a place to park. And so ultimately, cars parked on Hollister, and they left their cars there all day. So the idea was to have timed parking, add more parking. We weren't trying to hurt businesses. We know that, it's not easy, any business during construction. There's, there's always a problem. But the ultimate goal was that this was going to help Old Town. And I liked what Mayor Pro Tem said, a sense of place. That was the other. We wanted it to be a comfortable place for people to feel welcomed and walk and gather. And so we went into it, and I've heard before the pandemic, the striping project, which had been discussed for years, we were ready to do it, and then the pandemic hit. And then when we came out of the pandemic, we still felt like we needed a few workshops and to discuss it. And then the timing all just played out that we did all the projects together. And I often hear from community, why on earth did you do all these projects together at the same time? Well, I kind of look at it like a Band-Aid. You can either carefully rip off the Band-Aid or you can just rip it off. And if we had waited and just done one project at a time, the construction would most likely be going on 5 to 6 years. And at a cost that would be so expensive. So that's why. And I think we just have to, You know, there was one gentleman that wrote in a comment that he lives in Old Town. He enjoys seeing people riding their bikes and biking and walking, but he wants to see more enforcement because he's seeing people do crazy things. When they can't go left, they still want to go left out of a driveway. So, and I've seen it too. So I think that needs to be beefed up, and people need to know that you're at risk of hurting someone or yourself. So I think an annual, whenever, I'm not an engineer, so I can't say when you would think it's a good time to have another check-in, but I think it's critical. I don't want to wait 3 years. I want to have a check-in, and it's another opportunity for us to all talk again and know that we want to hear from you, and just keep the dialogue going. I think we've all agreed to that. And I know that we have made improvements. We have listened. I think there was even one on the eastern end of Hollister where the curb in front of their restaurant was painted red, and it was really a problem, and we changed it. So we do listen. We are listening. So anyway, yeah, I thank staff for all your work on this. Thank you. Even though I was warned when we asked for it, you're not going to really get a good picture. So, but we're here, and we promised it, and we'll do it again. So thank you. Councilmember Kiriakou.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You were talking about the spaces in front of Goodland Barbecue. They were able to put a couple of spaces in because we had enough good conditions in other places. Just a couple final thoughts. I think in change management, they talk about the messy middle, where you've gone from the present state to a future state, but you're not quite in either one yet. It's too dark for you to look back and see exactly where you've been, and so you miss kind of the warts of, oh God, it was so hard to make a left turn, and it was so hard to find parking, and at peak hours, it did still take me 8 minutes or 10 minutes to get through Old Town instead of 4. And the future state, you can't yet see that, where, okay, this all kind of works in sync, and the roundabouts are kind of helping the traffic flow so we don't have as much queuing, and now the bikes can go through safely and people want to walk. So we're kind of in that messy middle. We're not quite yet in either space. And so I think that's part of why this is so hard, because we see some benefits, but we haven't seen an overwhelming amount of benefit that no one could really argue. But it's easy to forget what it was like, and you become nostalgic for how you think it was. Getting to the roundabout question and when we should evaluate it, it's supposed to go in May. And I think that it would make the most sense for us to do an evaluation early next year, because you would have a couple things. One, you'd have at least 6 months of the roundabout data, so that would be at least the kind of measurement that we've had here. It's not perfect, but it's a nice round number, half of a year. Secondly, it would allow us to do some year-over-year comparisons. How was November, December, and January 24 and 25 compared to November, December, January going into 26? So you would start to get more of a complete picture. I think that would make things a little bit easier on our traffic engineers, and it's still enough time for us to do some things in the meantime. We're going to do some economic development help through our strategic plan. That's going to come in handy. I know there had been some discussion about Move Santa Barbara and the Hispanic Chamber or Old Town United to be able to come together on some kind of a workshop, and I'm very supportive of having some kind of a community facilitated conversation. We now have some information to go on. We can talk about things in a more informed way, but it also allows the businesses to really talk about what their lived experience is, and then allows us to respect that, and how do we fold that into what's safer for bicyclists and pedestrians and others. So I would support that. Then the last thing is we haven't really achieved consensus on any tweaks or changes that we want to make now based on what we do know. And there have been a couple things floated by different people. Myself, I think Councilmember Smith has floated a couple things. So I don't know if there's support, for example, to experiment with setting aside some of the 90-minute parking as all-day parking for the, for the businesses or others who need to be able to have a longer period of time. Could we change some spaces maybe on the Carson Street lot to all day or maybe half day? Maybe you give like a 4-hour window for like some of the spaces on Carson. I look, those spaces sit most of the time, and they're there, and it comes in really handy for some of the businesses that are really close by. But then there's other businesses where employees they feel like they're having to constantly move their car. So I don't know if there's consensus to try and, as an interim measure, based on some of the public comment we got, particularly written public comment, to set aside some parking that's been 90 minutes. We could probably do it by resolution. It'd be relatively quick to do, and it would be relatively quick to put back if we decided we wanted to put it back later. So that's one thought. And then I didn't hear anyone talk about the crosswalk at Magnolia. That's something I'm interested in what people think about. And then I didn't hear anyone talk about some kind of solution like a bike box or something else that staff could come back with for bikes that are going westbound, approaching Fairview. So I just don't want, in the discussion and being responsive to the public, I don't want to lose, if we can avoid it, some of these ideas that have come out of this discussion. If we could get concurrence, that'd be great. And if we're not there yet and we need more time, then at least like the public doesn't feel like, oh, they just forgot about it or they didn't care.
Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, like the long-term or longer parking, I know it's something that they're busy exploring and looking at ways, and I would just put this as one of the things for them to think about. And they'll come back to us at some point with some ideas, and I wouldn't want to just do a resolution right now and designate something without having staff have a chance to think about it and get back to us. And it might be the best idea, so I'm not saying anything against it, but I guess I'd like to toss it back to staff first to incorporate it in the work that they're already doing. That would be my, without prejudice, so to speak.
I just wouldn't want it to take a year to discuss it, to bring it back. I think it needs to be sooner than later if we want to discuss it, or staff bring it back for discussion.
Did you want to comment?
That's a nice.
We have been talking about it.
That's a nice segue to our work program discussion, which we'll have a little bit later. That's on there.
Nice segue.
No, we don't foresee it being a year. We're hoping before October.
Great.
And I would say the same as far as the bike box, to ask staff to kind of consider it, but not to make any judgments.
Madam Mayor and council members, we have, and staff does not recommend the bike box. It was suggested to me that a couple green bike legends could be put in the right-hand turn pocket that turns from Hollister onto Fairview. And I saw a diagram of that possibility. So that's something that could be done. And in fact, I made a note that we're going to do that. I think it's a good suggestion. Okay. But the bike box has been looked at a couple times and has not been recommended by Public Works.
So is there any concern about how intuitive or not that would be? Because you're basically in a right turn lane, and it's pretty obvious it's a right turn. There's cars ahead of you. There's cars behind you signaling. It'll be clear to someone who's in a bike that, no, I'm going to keep going straight where I am, and then I'll just get into the bike lane when I get through Fairview. I haven't really heard any staff talk about this yet, and I don't want to just assume that's going forward without vetting it a little.
Councilmember Kiriakou, yes, it would be it's a fairly standard marking. It's used in other areas where you have shared lane situations,
shared turn lane situations?
Yes. Okay. Yes, it's also used there. We're in constrained space, and it's the best solution that we can come up with to direct bikes in the safest manner possible, because of the fact that the right turn lane is the slower lane, obviously, and and the area where it's probably best for them to be, even in a through movement.
So it doesn't make sense, because right now you have kind of that checkered green right when you're approaching the right-hand turn lane, where it's sort of like acknowledging there's a conflict. I've seen other communities where that checkered lane, those checkered lines go at an angle to direct the pedestrian, not the pedestrian, excuse me, I'm getting tired, the bike to kind of guide them to the travel lane. And that doesn't make sense here either?
Councilmember Kiyaraki, our recommendation would be for them to continue, for the bike to continue in the right turn lane where speeds are slower, and to not, I mean, the more confident bike is going to merge into the through lane, but for a less experienced rider, which is what these markings are for, is to stay in the right turn lane and continue through in the right turn lane.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Councilmember Reyes-Martin.
Thank you. Just in response to some of the questions for consensus, I think with the employee parking, that does seem like maybe that's something a little simpler. So I do support kind of staff looking at that and seeing what we can do, especially if those lots are maybe underutilized right now, and if that helps alleviate some of the employee parking issues, I think that's a win-win. I've definitely heard about the question of a crosswalk at Magnolia. I would just want more information from staff about how that would work, and does that create any, other challenges? So I guess I'm not ready tonight to say absolutely yes, but I'm interested in staff looking at that and bringing some information to us. And with the bike issue, I'm a visual learner, so it's very hard for me to conceptualize what we're talking about. But it seems like maybe we need a little bit more clarification or just more education for us about what the challenge is and what kind of a proposed solution is and what works and what doesn't. So I'm open to, just getting more information on that.
I too agree with the suggestions that were made. I agree that Magnolia is going to be trickier because it doesn't line up. So with the other side of the street, so it's going to take us. I need to see a visual of what that would look like. And
Madam Mayor, the one input I would give is there are kind of two levels of improvements. Some of these improvements are relatively simple to implement with just paint. The crosswalk at Magnolia would be pretty much its own capital project because it requires curb ramps and a lot of other work. Different timelines for those types of projects, but anyway.
I understand.
Madam Mayor and council members, and so yes, we have already committed to put the project in the CIP. So that's where it starts, and then from there, it would get life, and the council would decide whether to fund it compared to other projects, and then the staff would look at the pros and cons and do the analysis necessary to see what would be feasible, what it would take to put that crosswalk in. But the first step we've already committed to do. When the CIP comes back for the CIP workshop, I've already directed staff to put that project in there.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you. Yes, and I agree that I'm open to more information about the crosswalk. I'm still open to more information about the bike situation at approaching Fairview as well. I didn't know if there was any other addition. There's also just some additional comments that had come in about sort of the, I don't know if there's thoughts on any of the things I mentioned in terms of the right turn to Kidman or Kellogg, and then sort of the question of the center area between, either Rutherford and the community center or Rutherford and Kidman, or just to get more information and when that might return.
I would like more information because I don't really understand how that would work exactly, and we're not engineers, so I think it's something we need to hear from engineers whether that would work or.
I think on both those items, staff has taken the note. Certainly Derek has taken the note, and both situations are understood. The two right-hand pockets, one going on to Kellogg when you're going eastbound, one going on to Kinman when you're going westbound, are underutilized right now. They're basically used for 2 bus stops, but they were taking out of commission. And so Derek can look at that and see if that can be adjusted. The medians, certainly, Derek indicated he's willing to look at those, but as also stated, anytime we put a left turn back, it could be problematic. So both those, I think, were noted by staff, and so at some point, if a decision is made that that's a good idea, we would let council know before we made the change. But notes were taken.
Okay, all right. Then I think.
On the cadence for coming back, so we did hear a year. We did hear a little bit shorter than a year. We're happy to go either way.
What were you suggesting?
We could wait a full year, come back in March, or we could. Councilmember Smith also suggested maybe October, November. That would be fine with staff too.
I was just saying early next year so that we could have some year-over-year data and we'd have 6 months of the roundabout. Assuming the roundabout comes online in May at some point, if you don't have if you meet in November, they've had no chance to really look at the 6 months of data and draw any conclusions. And I just don't want to do this for the roundabout and then we don't really have apples to oranges data for the roundabout because it's been such a small period of time. Because they wouldn't be able to assess 6 months like that.
I will say, I think I'm okay with that, with the caveat that I'm confident that this council, if there was an urgent issue or, with the changes coming in the next few months, that we would request this item or a part of this item to come sooner. Maybe the economic data makes more sense in early next year to have a better comparison. But if there are other issues that are coming up, I think we all remain committed to bringing it up and not waiting.
That can work for me.
Great. Okay. Are we done? Are we done with this one? Okay. Break? Yes. Quick one. 5 minutes. All right, 10 minutes. bring this meeting back to order.
Now we'll take us to item C2, Finance Department Priority Setting Workshop, Fiscal Year 25-26 Annual Work Program.
Thank you. Mr. Rio, it's your show.
Annual work program. So tonight I'll provide an update on our department's ongoing work commitments, staffing and workload considerations, and also key projects that are upcoming this fiscal year. So again, just the purpose here tonight, we're going to update the council on our existing work commitments, again, review the staffing and workload, introduce our potential new work efforts, and then also discuss our work priorities for this upcoming fiscal year. This slide here is just a summary of our department, our overview. We are staffed with 12 full-time equivalents. Areas of responsibility, so this is just a list of the core functions that our department does. We don't necessarily have different divisions, but we do have these core functions. Larger cities, you will see these broken out into actual divisions, but we are finance administration, accounting services, which is your financial reporting and GL management. We assist with payroll, budget management, treasury, that's your revenue and tax cash collections, investment program and debt management program, business licenses and permits. So we do facilitate that process. And then for purchasing, that's more of a support role where we oversee the credit card program for the city, and then vendor management, but we do support general services, taking on the procurement role. So this next slide is a snapshot of our structure. You can see how, the different positions and how we're made up, but also I just wanted to point out, though, we do have specialized contract financial services that help support us, which includes with our some of our major tax revenues, and then also consulting services involving with our cannabis and also cannabis tax audits. We use actuarial services. We do have independent auditors, investment services, municipal financial advisory services as needed. And then we're still working on securing our short-term vacation rental monitoring and compliance consultant to assist us with compliance and education, and then also transit occupancy tax audit. And then again, we also have banking services with which we bank locally with Community West Bank that's located in Old Town. This next slide just highlights the major department highlights for this current fiscal year. Just starting here with the first major one, just pursued tax-exempt financing and completed 2 types of bond issuances recently, so that would go towards completing those critical capital projects. We did conduct 12 cannabis site inspections. I'm not going to read through the whole list, but just kind of high-level overview here. Just want to point out, though, we did receive our 20th Government Finance Officers Association Award for Certificate of Achievement with our annual financial review report. We did submit also this most recent annual audit, and that was provided to you in the packet, actually, today's meeting. And then we did receive our 4th Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Award for the last 2-year budget plan that was adopted 2 years ago. So again, we're going to be, when we do complete this budget cycle, we do plan to submit this next one. Okay, moving on to the list of some of the priority projects coming up. In a nutshell, this list, and also on the next slide, there's 4 main categories. Really, what we're focusing on is financial compliance and transparency enhancement. So that's implementing these Government Accounting Standard Board statements. We do have that one coming up, statement number 101 for compensated absences. We are, again, continuing to timely complete our annual audit, and then also develop and implement our transit occupancy tax audit policy. And then the other major category we have is technological and process improvements. And so you'll see on here just a lot of list items mentioned related to Tyler ERP Pro, different modules, which includes contract modules, grants management modules, and accounts receivable modules that we'll be implementing. Also transitioning historical financial data from our Encode 8 to the Tyler ERP Pro, just to ensure that we have all financial data from city inception all in one software. And then implement electronic workflow and payroll HR forms is also something that we'll be looking at. And then revenue and cost recovery initiatives is another major one. I'm actually going to go to the next slide. I believe that's listed here. But there's, we'll be pursuing updates to the city's streetlight assessment rates in coordination with the Public Works Department, and then also support stormwater funding study to evaluate cost, funding options, and methodologies. And then I did want to point out, too, that we are also actively working on developing a retired annuitant employment policy in coordination with Human Resources, and then also starting work to implement the retirement investment plan options 457B and 401A for city staff. And so those are kind of the major projects that we have coming up. And then this next slide is very high level partial list. The full list is actually in the staff report, but these are prospective projects that represent a snapshot of long-range work efforts that currently exceed our existing staffing capacity, but however, as our priorities shift or staff resources do become available, some of these projects may move ahead in others, or just due to changes in priorities may move ahead in the timeline. And so these are just some of the major ones that we are looking at. And from there, I'd like to conclude my presentation. If there's any questions or feedback, welcome that from City Council.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I'm actually more to justify you having waited around for hours and hours. I think I owe you at least a question to, I guess on two things, really. It seems like on some of the ones that you have on your forthcoming projects, they're done in some fashion in coordination with other departments, notably short-term vacation rentals, and I think the business permit evaluation. And so in the ordering, I'm guessing the ordering you do that is really going to be dependent upon what the other departments are doing too. Is that, that'll depend where it is, higher or lower on your lists?
Yeah, Councilmember Kazan, Mayor Pro Tem Kazan, that's a great observation. But yes, our priorities will shift if it becomes a priority in other departments, and finance does have to play more of a support role. So that is a possibility.
Let's see. Thank you.
I have a question. Well, first, a compliment. I really respect how conservative you are. You're not super, but you're conservative, and that's what we want in a finance director, to be conservative. And I'm wondering if you could tell me how we're doing as far as, you know, I think we all have our special projects and special things we want, and I keep seeing more and more money going out that maybe we weren't expecting for grants, and each, you know, committee coming in with new, like, let's do this, and we all, you know, there's such a need, and we care so much for our nonprofits, but I have concerns that, you know, so tell me realistically, you know, I think I heard you say not a while ago that we need to kind of stay status quo. Can you help me understand what you mean by that? And if we keep adding all these extra funding ideas to our list, where are we going to end up?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, great question. So yes, our financial situation, we can maintain the status quo service levels. If you recall, we did, you know, pursue the debt finance, and we do have to prioritize those annual debt service payments, specifically from the general fund. You do recall we did adopt an MOU last year, an updated MOU with COLAs that will be in effect for the next couple years. We did adopt or approve I believe it's a 5-year contract with Public Safety Contract Services. So there, you know, but with all that said, though, we're able to stay status quo service levels. So if we want to increase funding for other items, we will most likely will have to decrease funding in other competing items. Again, our revenue sources are limited. You know, we are projecting about a $50 million ongoing general fund budget. If there's one-time revenues that are made available, you know, certainly those can be utilized for one-time expenditures. So we always want to make sure that we look at that. With that said, though, if within the work programs and some of ours, especially in the long range, you'll see some of the items do address some of the, I guess you would call them revenue enhancements in a way, like the street lighting assessment, getting that to be more standalone on its own. The stormwater analysis is another one that we're looking at. But also, we do probably need to take a look here over the next couple years about considering possibly a revenue enhancement option if we want to increase funding in other areas.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I think, didn't you also have an updating of DIV on here? Did I remember that correctly? In addition to those other revenue enhancements that you just mentioned to, oh, sorry. Was that one? DIF, I was asking about. Isn't that one that you have either on the forthcoming development impact fees? 'Cause
Yes.
you have- Yeah?
Yeah, that's correct. We are assisting Public Works with their updated diff nexus study, and then also looking at updating the diff rates.
Right, so as far as revenues go, we're talking development impact fees, short-term vacation rentals, stormwater, and there was a fourth that you mentioned.
Street lights.
Street lighting.
Street lighting. So at least it's something, you know, some additional revenues coming in, although some of them are probably, anyway, yeah. You also had, some of these that you have are things that are going to enhance the efficiency of other departments too, right? There seems like there's a fair number of them that's going to be just reduce costs and so forth. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say that is accurate. With some of the software updates we're making, we're trying to do is improve efficiency and workload, and making sure staff's fully trained to use the software to its full capabilities, and then also looking at, you know, some of the use of the artificial intelligence and robotic process automation to assist with supplement staff as a tool to help streamline operations that sometimes can be redundant. So we are looking at that too, and so hopefully we can start seeing a little bit of those results at tail end of next year, and so we'll be working on, again, a lot of those software updates or implementations here in this coming year.
And what does the grant management module do? Will that help across the board in terms of grant management?
Yes, that's correct. The grants module will actually be able to centralize all the grant data into one software. So there's no longer, you know, staff can choose to maintain a separate spreadsheet, but you could centralize all the data into one software and have it talk to, you know, the other financial software. It just makes it a lot easier and more efficient. If you're, let's say, reviewing a transaction related to a grant, you can easily pull up within the software all the details about the grant, including its terms, conditions, and even, you know, historical, and then.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any public speakers?
Madam Mayor, I have no speaker slips, and there are no members of the public on the webinar.
Okay, so are we looking for a motion with this one? No, is it just discuss work? We do need a motion?
Mayor, yes, just for consistency with how we've been handling the work plans this season.
Would like to make the motion?
I'm happy to make the motion. So I move that we adopt the annual work program for fiscal year 2025-26 for the Finance Department.
Do I have a second? Okay. All right, roll call vote.
Yes, council members, do please lock in your votes. Councilmember Reyes Martin.
Aye.
Councilmember Kiriakou.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Kasdan.
Aye.
And Mayor Perotti.
Aye. Ayes have it. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, that will bring us to item C3, General Government Department Priority Setting Workshop, Fiscal Year 2025-26 Annual Work Program.
Oops.
Just a point of order. I just noticed we're nearing 10 o'clock, so I was just wanted to check in with fellow council members that we're charging ahead.
Yes.
Okay.
Call it charging.
Just making sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't think we're going to be done by 10. We used to have to take a vote.
But we
was a
don't,
policy.
we changed that, right?
We don't do it anymore. We haven't. It was never really an official policy that I know of. It was the, yeah. We would say, will we continue or not, you know, at 10?
Yeah, some agencies do have it in their bylaws, and
we
our
do.
city attorney asked me about it just earlier, and I said, during the time I've been here, we haven't done that. But
Check, if you
we
want
used to do
to
it.
take a vote.
Yeah.
It was a practice, not a
Got it.
policy. Okay, all right.
Important distinction. I'm going to actually kick this one off, Madam Mayor, members of council, and then I'll turn it over to our Assistant City Manager, Jaime Valdez, and our Assistant to the City Manager, Shannon Kern, is also here if questions come up. Next slide, please. So we'll follow a very similar template to the other departments and to the Finance Department that you just saw. Update council on existing work commitments, but I'll probably spend the most of the time on the slide that shows what we're proposing and recommending for our work plan for next fiscal year, and we can go through that when we get to it. Next slide, please. So here is an org chart of the City Manager's office. As you can see, City Attorney, City Manager, City Council, directly under the City Manager. I just want to note our Executive Assistant, Don Christensen, our Assistant to the City Manager, Shannon Kern, both did an awesome job putting on the Cal Cities meeting we just had last Friday. Assistant City Manager Jaime Valdez, he'll report on the 3 divisions, City Clerk, Human Resources, and Community Relations Manager after I'm done with the City Manager's office. And then to the far right, I just want to note that position has been vacant for quite some time. We just filled it recently by promoting someone from within, from the clerk's office. Blake Markham has come over to the City Manager's office, so we're still in transition, but we are now full. Next slide, please. So here are some highlights from this current fiscal year. I'll let you digest these. I'll note a couple that stand out for me. Certainly recruiting, hiring our Public Works Director, Nina Buelna. Buelna was a big accomplishment. I'm also looking at the second one there on the top row, the POP grant program, which is going to be coming back to the council sometime this year. The note I want to make there is, we are flexible as well, just as was pointed out by the Finance Department. That item was not on our work plan for this year, but it came up as a reaction to Project Connect, and so we adjusted accordingly. So a lot of time was put into that effort, as the council's aware, and when I get to our work plan for next year, you'll notice I'll make a comment about something that kind of took a back seat because of that. You can see some of the other items on there. Obviously, we're very proud of the Helen Putnam Award we received. I believe we are going to be submitting an application for this year. I see head nods for a different department. We think we have a good application. We had a great application last year, but you know how the politics probably works. Maybe it's not our turn this year, but we're going for it anyway. And then the last one I want to mention is not necessarily an accomplishment from our department, but it's something of note that I think is really important, and that's the last one in the bottom right-hand side, develop and rolled out management training program. We're actually, we did not roll it out. We're participating in a program with the county and the city of Santa Barbara, and so far it's just been an awesome program, and I'm so glad that the county led this charge and that we're participating. They've had 1 round of supervisors training. That's a 5-week program. We had 2 supervisors that attended that first round. They're now in the second round of supervisors training. We have 2 in that one, and the first round of executive level training, and we have 2 of our department heads in that one. They also have a management training, and so we did not have anyone in the first round, but we're looking to have some staff in that one. I've attended some of the beginning sessions. I've been there for some of the graduation, and it's really a good program. So, and I'll give kudos to a former employee who really did lead the effort on this. That's Christy Schmidt. There's no doubt that she led the effort. Her hands are all over this effort that the county's putting on. So it's a great program, and I'm really glad that we're a part of it. Next slide, please. So now we get to what we're proposing for next fiscal year. So I'll hit some highlights. Some of these were on our list for last year. I have made comments about the big public work projects, big projects that we have, and how important I think it is for us to pay attention to them as they all move into construction. There's 5 now, the big 5 we can call them: Project Connect, the Cathedral Oaks Crib Wall, San Jose Creek Multipurpose Trail, the train station, which is obviously under construction, and really now the library improvement project has officially gone to construction because we have started work on the temporary space, and it's moving. So that will take a team effort and a lot of our attention. And as was mentioned by our finance director, we have received the funds from that bond issuance. They are in the city's hands. Vision Zero is primarily in the Public Works Department, but I do think it's such an important council priority, and we did receive a grant to prepare an action plan that I want to apply attention from our office on that. So that is something that will be assigned to Ms. Kern, and she'll be kind of the coordinator between the city manager's office and Public Works, but it will be led in Public Works. The next item was mentioned by our finance director, and this is something that we'll collaborate with them. It is a big deal to switch, if we choose to switch programs. It is a fairly big deal. It doesn't sound like it, but I've been through it in other agencies, and yeah, it's a big step to switch everyone's 457 over to a different can't think of the right word. Yes,
Provider.
thank you. The fourth one's new. This came up from observing the county adopt the new plan on aging. We also had a presentation here in front of the council about 6 months ago. And there's a lot of items. If you breeze through that study, there's a lot of interesting items on there. It's much bigger, obviously, than the city itself. It's a big regional collaborative effort, I think. But embedded in there is this idea of cities becoming age-friendly communities. And by taking steps, it's something you can get through ARP. And so it seemed pretty interesting. There's a website. You can see in the state of California what cities have already done this. And so there are quite a few cities up in the Bay Area, down in LA. I don't think there's many yet in Santa Barbara County, but we have put this on the list because there seemed to be interest in taking that first step. Mentioned the Goleta Train Depot. We just don't want this one to fall through the cracks. This is one, so much focus on the construction, but there was always the plan that it would have a cafe, a vendor, and that does take some work. And so we can't wait till the end of construction and then have it be an afterthought. And I think more than just having a cafe be successful there, I think the bigger thinking was this would be a place beyond just a train station. And so, you know, can this be a catalyst for placemaking in this kind of underutilized area? And so we will be putting thought into that, but it does start with, you know, probably some simple vendors and maybe just a simple cafe to kick that thing off. So that's on our list for this year. Number 6 is the point I wanted to make. This was actually on our list for this year, and we were supposed to get it done. And I will admit we did not. And this is an example where we had to adapt, and it was because we shifted a lot of Ms. Kern's time to Old Town and the POP program that this went to the back burner. But we've already started working on it, I understand, and so I think we can get this done pretty quickly. I know this has been kind of on the back burner, I get the feeling, for quite a while, so I think it's something we're excited to move forward. The next one, I'll probably recommend making a slight change here. It's no secret. We have signaled several times that we plan to recommend in the budget a second enforcement officer. So that has been stated many times, and that's still our plan to bring that forward when the budget comes forward. And so I think the way this is written now, it focuses on Old Town, and the reality is by getting a second officer, it's citywide. And so we'll change the language on this one, strengthen parking enforcement, make adjustments as needed in the entire city, and broaden that one. Yep. The street lighting assessment rates were mentioned under the finance department. And I'll make a comment because I think a question came up about, where the lead is. Yeah, you might see items that appear in several departments' work plans, and that's because we do collaborate. Some of the harder things we work on take a multi-department effort. But it's always smart to have one department be on lead, and so we do follow kind of a project management model where, you know, someone has to be responsible and someone has to be on lead, but we also follow this idea that we need to collaborate. This is an example. This one will appear on 3 departments' work plan because we all have a role in it. It's a Prop 218 process to raise rates for a street lighting district, and so it will be Public Works, it will be a little bit finance, and it will be a little bit from the city manager's office. The next one I'm recommending removing, number 9. This goes as the opposite of what I just said, I guess. This one will be on the Public Works' work plan when you see that in 2 weeks. I don't think it needs to be on ours. It could be. We'll probably have some involvement. But I would like to substitute one that was a complete oversight, something that we're engaging on right now, and it will take almost a full year, and that is the renegotiation of the MOU for Fire Station 10. So it was an oversight. It absolutely should be on this list. I think it's a very high priority. I've certainly heard that from the council. Jaime's already working on it. The current MOU expires March of next year, so we have a full year, but it will take that. It will. So we'll substitute that one and put that one on there, and then finally we have childcare on there again. At some point, this may become kind of institutionalized where it becomes normal operation. But it is still very, very cutting edge, I think, that this council has decided to put resources into childcare. So we left that one on the list, and probably will come up when we bring the budget forward, I assume, in June. And so that's the list. I don't know what the next slide is, but we can certainly at this point pause and take any questions or direction from council before we move on to the other divisions.
Councilmember Smith, did you have a question? Okay. I'm not seeing any questions. Yes?
No, just one question. So the ARP, Age-Friendly Community Network, so in other words, is it that, what does ARP do? How does that, what is it?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Kaz. And I believe to some extent it's kind of their program and their stamp of approval. So they run the network and they guide cities through the process. And so one of the key steps is to form kind of a group of citizens, not a committee or a commission, but a group, a task force, so to speak, that guides the city through the process. And my experience is they will send a representative who will help work with the city to come up with the plan. And it's that ultimate plan that's part of their, kind of application process that gets the standing.
So is it to develop a plan that then is submitted to somebody for grants and things like that? Or just
not
like
necessarily.
a guiding
No, it's a
document,
guide.
like a strategic
Yeah,
plan?
you get the designation without implementing the plan. But then, so you get the designation, but then now we have a plan that might call for, like any strategic plan, might call for various things, a new lens that we look at things as we're doing, various improvements, just like the rest of our strategic plans. So maybe now when we're looking at doing sidewalk improvements in Old Town, we now have this new lens that we look through that says, well, we should have benches more often because people like having benches and a place to rest when they're walking around Old Town, or different things like that.
Benches would be nice.
Yeah, I think it would be analogous to kind of Vision Zero, where you look at every improvement through the lens of a different way and then incorporate that, as Mr. Nisbet said.
So will we also have a family-friendly one then too?
We can't be that friendly to that many groups. We got to pick one or the other. No, I think, I think this is just one that's formalized and is out there, so it makes sense. And then I apologize for the Fire Station 10 one. I think I left part of my brain in neighborhood services, so I just didn't quite capture it over. I don't know if there's anything further comments on the 10 before
Thank you. I'm good.
I'm not seeing any.
So we can flip to the other 3 divisions?
Yeah, and so this was the other one. This is the long-range one,
Oh,
if
yeah.
we have more time. These are just some of the items that I think are all, worthwhile, but, if we can get to them, we'll try to get to them as we can. And then I was just going to cover the city clerk's division. One of the big things we're trying to do, much like finance, is take advantage of what they call enterprise content management systems and software, automation, better workflows, just things where we don't end up with multiple systems, or someone has their own spreadsheet, but you could be in a different system. Trying to unify that so that the workflow and also as Acorn has been brought on, stepping up our security and records management and storage just to be less vulnerable to cyber attacks, all the things that you would want to do to ensure that we protect the city's records. The other parts of it would be, again, working with general services and IT, better process requests, public records requests, and if we can automate those to a better degree, it's much more helpful. A lot of what we do now is manual, and to be thorough, it's good, but it's also can be time intensive. And then just another one, kind of a feel-good one, coordinate an appreciation event for all city boards and commissions. I think sometimes we forget, these folks are volunteering and doing great work, and instead of just saying thank you here and there, but to actually do an actual event. And the other one is just something that the clerk has been working on is the records retention program. As technology changes, right, more and more is done through email and electronic. So basically, excuse me, trying to improve what we have that's kind of dated back quite a bit, maybe over 10 years, but things always come up, and so this is one of the ones that has been punted for a couple of years. Community relations, as you can tell, they've been very, very busy, and will continue to be for next fiscal year. We did mention the drone show earlier today. Part of that, the reason why it's up high is that happens early in the fiscal year. I think that's why it was up there. Comments that we got back through LEAD and others is like the knowing your zones, and I think part of that's know your district, but the zones here would be the emergency zones for evacuations through the Genesis program, and so we're planning to bring that to council in the coming months. Increase Old Town Open for Business campaign. You can see the list there, really just trying to be out more in the community. Number 9, spoke about it earlier today, MTD and bus promotion of city council meetings as well, so trying to tie it back to the city and not just for MTD. Vision Zero initiative, really trying to brand that and move it forward as part of our materials and suite of things that the city can offer to the public. Number of kind of big milestones, public education on the 100-year earthquake anniversary. I think that was in June of 1926, right? So it'd be 100 years next year. Was it this year? 25, okay. And then the other one's partner with the Historical Society to promote Glebe Valley Historical Society and its events. Just more of those kind of items. And then just kind of longer range, the city's upcoming 25-year anniversary is not too far away. Same thing with the community center turning 100. The train depot opening, we're about, I think we said around summer of 26. So it'll be here before you know it. Project Connect completion, all of these require don't require, but would benefit from bigger events and celebrating some of these milestone projects, and explore the feasibility of a city-sponsored event such as the Old Town Community Dinner, something analogous to the Dam Dinner as well. HR and risk management, we're almost done here. These things are more technical in nature. Develop a retired annuitant employment policy with finance. So this is kind of items and guidance that we've gotten from CalPERS, just making sure there's bright lines between when somebody separates and when you bring them back as a consultant or as additional help. Review and revise, this is kind of an ongoing thing, our city's injury and illness prevention policy. This is a huge issue for HR and risk management. And then you'll see again the 457B. It's a lot of work. It includes the HR side, finance side, and then the offerings to the employees. And that wraps it up.
I do.
Questions? Councilmember Castan?
Yeah, I guess 2 things. One is with the Open for Business in Old Town. There are different competing. I know Phoebe has one of her own thing, And I guess what I'd urge is for you
Councilmember,
to-
is your mic on?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
But I just
sorry.
wasn't close to it, so I'll lean closer. But what I was saying is to, kind of make sure it's working. It's actually accomplishing something. It's not enough just to me at least, just to go do it for the sake of doing it. We want to know if we're doing this, that it actually is causing people, making them aware, having an effect. And if there are other, so I'm supportive of the notion or the idea of promoting Old Town, especially during this interim period, call it. But let's make sure we're using, whatever we use is going to be effective. And what I've not been sure about is just saying open for business and there's no kind of incentives attached, that if you eat there, get a coupon and eat 9 times, you get the 10th free or something. So just keep that in mind, or for Kelly. And the other one is the promotion of Vision Zero. I guess I'm not sure what the purpose is. We measure Vision Zero. Our benefit of Vision Zero is proof is in the pudding. Is it safer? Are the roads, are people, do they feel more comfortable? Are bicyclists, I can go on. But, so I don't know what the point of having a campaign for Vision Zero would be. For whom? Where's it going?
We partially do that with like Go Green Goleta. We do other things that are, encouraging people to think about these things. And I can certainly follow up to see what specifics we could do, but I think it's more awareness and the buy-in that the council did take the step to become a Vision Zero community.
Yeah.
So it's some of that awareness.
But we got
you're
to
sa-
educate people about it, and honestly, like for instance, I see E-Bike Safety Awareness Week listed on my screen at least. There are things where I can think of where we really want to promote, where we really want to educate, where there's really going to be an impact, a consequence of what we do. Just doing it because, anyway, that's my point. Anyway, thank you.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes, I was actually going back to some of the long-range items for the city manager's office. One item I flagged was the revenue neutrality agreement. It's just, I recognize a lot of the practical challenges that we have, but I just don't know if we should lose sight of just having that on a list or somewhere as at least as a placeholder.
Yeah, we can certainly add that. And I believe Mr. Rio always has a line in his quarterly reports that talks about the loss in revenues. But yeah, we can absolutely add that as a number 8.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Do we have any public speakers?
I have no speaker slips, Mayor, and there is no one on the Zoom webinar.
Okay, all right. We need a motion. Are you ready? Would you like to do another one? Oh.
And if we could just have the motion include as amended so that we can capture the items. Yeah.
Oh, you're going to do it? Okay.
Well, if it's as simple as saying that we move to approve the general government departmental work priorities for the coming fiscal year as amended, is that?
I think do we do the adoption language or is that fine?
I think it captures the adoption of the work plan, so I'm comfortable as amended.
Yay.
So you have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Larkin, your vote, please. Councilmember Reyes Martin.
Aye.
Councilmember Kiriakou.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tempore Kasdan.
Oh, aye.
And Mayor Prodi.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay, it's unanimous. There we go. All right. Anybody want to make any reports? No, you know. Okay. Please, go ahead.
Okay.
Councilmember Carriaco.
So this past week, I attended the National League of Cities Congressional City Conference in Washington, D.C.
That is a big one.
And had a chance to meet for half an hour with Congressman Carbajal and talk about the San Jose Creek project funding status, talk about the importance of not making municipal bonds taxable, and also the importance of Head Start to our local communities and our local economy. And also got the opportunity to sit in on a meeting organized by Cal Cities leadership with Senators Padilla and Schiff, where they talked about the continuing resolution and what their plans were and what their priorities were, and also got an opportunity to learn and mingle and network and all those good things. But it was a great experience. I guess I'll say one thing that was not so great though. I was right there at Black Lives Matter Plaza when they were taking jackhammers to it, and there was a group of protesters, and it was just a really unfortunate thing to see. I'll just end there.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes, just a brief committee update. The Finance and Audit Standing Committee did meet and reviewed the items that we had on our consent agenda today, including the audit and the quarterly update. We also did an interesting review of our reserve discussion, and that was helpful for me as a new council member. And I think it's an interesting question or planning process moving forward, thinking about how we are planning for ongoing maintenance, particularly as it relates to our, aging buildings that we own. So that was a helpful review for me. And I think, anything else, Stuart?
We had a homelessness committee meeting. Did you want to make? I'm trying to remember exactly what we did. It was a long meeting. It was a good meeting. We did talk about a different ordinance possibly for safe parking. We talked about ongoing programs and priorities, and updating the strategic plan for 2025 through 2027. Can you think of anything else?
Just looking at the new numbers.
The new numbers of homeless
and
population.
thinking, what do they mean and so forth.
Yeah. Councilmember Reyes-Martin.
The Human Services Standing Committee met, and we completed our review of the city grants with our recommendations, so that will come next to council. Thank you so much to staff for helping facilitate and shepherd that process with, I think, 90-ish applications. Not easy. And then I also had the joy of attending the Weave Business of Care graduation, which was a class that was conducted entirely in Spanish for childcare providers. It was so inspiring and wonderful, and I got to give some graduation remarks in Spanish, which was always a treat for me. And it was just really great to hear from them as business owners and as being passionate about childcare, and how much they appreciated that the city of Goleta supported the program. And so it was really great to see that success.
Thank you. I'm just going to make one real quick remark. We had, let's see, what is his title exactly? Managing Director for LoSan, Jason Jewell, and Deputy Managing Director Chris Orlando came up. I invited them at my first meeting for LoSan. I invited them to come up. Anybody that would like to come up and see our train station, it's under construction. And they took me up on it. And they did come up, and we did a tour. And I think they were very impressed with what they saw. And yeah, it was a great. Mr. Valdez was there and helped us with facilitating the tour. And yeah, So I was very impressed that they came. And they also came up because they've been working with Senator Lamone on suicide prevention. And they've been putting up, where needed, and signs that basically tell people you're not alone. And you can call 988. And, you know, that was the schools, San Marcos High School, kind of a program they put together for their community of wellness. And so they Losan worked with Senator Lamone, and so they brought up a bunch of signs. And, you know, apparently San Marcos had a student that committed suicide by train. So that was really impressive, too. It was sad, but impressive. So anyway, that's all I have. Anybody else? What?
No, we're almost there.
I'm going to make us go to 11. No. Don't you all have bets on how late we go tonight? I mean.
They said 10 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Mr. Rosen, do you have
Yeah,
anything?
I've got a half-hour report. No, I'm just kidding. I just wanted to say congrats to the City of Goleta team on a successful Cal Cities divisional dinner. It was wonderful to
It was
attend.
fun.
That's it.
Yeah, it was really delightful. All right, meeting adjourned.